All right, well, let's get started. A good group assembled so far, and we'll continue to let people in. My name is Dave Umhafer. I want to welcome everybody to our O'Brien Fellowship Q&A. We are coming to you from the O'Brien Newsroom on the campus of Marquette University, downtown Milwaukee. I am the director of the fellowship and a longtime Wisconsin journalist. I was an O'Brien Fellow myself in 2015. I am helped out today by Vanessa Rivera and Hannah Hernandez, who you should be able to see waving at you. Hannah and Vanessa are grad students who have reported alongside O'Brien Fellows as part of the program, and also are currently working as grad assistants helping me promote the program. Hannah, do you want to take it from here?
Yes, so the plan today is to briefly walk through the basics of the fellowship, and then we'll take live questions. However, if we don't get to your question today, we'll contact you later to make sure that you have the answer. And you can drop your questions right in the chat, or you can use the raise hand function to ask your question. And the raise hand function is typically in the toolbar on the top or bottom of your screen.
And if those options aren't working for you, just let us know by either waving. I know that some people, it looks like you can't have your cameras on, but I'm working on that now. Or just speak up and we'll make sure to call on you.
Great. First, just a bit about who we are and how we operate. We have a very idealistic mission and enormous resources thanks to amazing donations by the Frechette family honoring Perry and Alicia O'Brien, who are Marquette alumni. Each spring, we select 3 to 4 journalists who propose rigorous, explanatory, or investigative projects. We work with many applicants ahead of time, as I mentioned, on honing their story pitches. We want really ambitious projects that not only reveal and explain entrenched problems and hold American institutions accountable, but that also try to uncover potential solutions. And we want stories that need the extra time and resources that we provide, the 9 months of time. We prefer stories that take a national approach, even if they are told mainly through one US state or region. A unique aspect of O'Brien is the student-centered nature of it. Our mission, our donors wanted us to train the next generation of in-depth reporters. And so we seek out journalists who are up for the joys and challenges of helping train and mentor 2 student interns on their team, along with a lot of help from me. Students help with research, they do data gathering, interviews, multimedia, a lot of what you need, and they try to get the skills they need as well. And they have a chance to, earn a byline by working hard. So you probably have some questions about the student aspect. We want to play a brief video introduction that Vanessa put together, interviewing some students from the past.
Oops.
You want this to be great because no one else is doing this. You might be the first to do this. One of my favorite experiences from working with Lee and John and Fu on this project is going to Alabama and learning about, the importance of getting to your roots, and then the history of civil rights and how it's continuing to move this country forward.
When I first thought about journalism, I often put it in this box of like daily reporting and just turning around stories super quick. So it's been cool to be able to spend a year reporting on a certain topic and really dive deep into the research aspect. Being able to actually go into the community and practice what you've learned in class and do hands-on reporting and community work is so important and such a vital experience as a journalist.
You meet a lot of great people along the way. There's a lot of resources available to you, a lot of workshops. And so I think it's very enjoyable, especially when you get whatever that big thing is for your story. That's very exciting. Greg Borowski in our first meeting said to lose the imposter syndrome. And so I think that really helped my confidence going into every activity, every interview, every meeting that I had with all of these professional journalists that we were working with.
My relationship with my fellow has really grown over time, because when I first started, I was like kind of intimidated. It's like New York Times contributing writer, but she's very friendly and has always been there to give me advice, whether it's about like school or life or journalism, but also allowed me and my partner Juliana to really like go out on our own and explore things for ourselves. And Juliana and I are actually writing a story on our own, and she's just here to like guide us and like help us get that published.
Thanks, Vanessa. That was awesome. So I'm going to get into a few more details here before we get to the Q&A. Just a quick review. You would be applying for the 2024-25 fellowship starting in August, ending in May on the school calendar. The stipend is now $75,000 over 9 months. There's $9,000 allowance for research and travel, hiring data experts, producers, whatever you need. There's also money toward housing and moving if you're going to be residential in Milwaukee. The student aspect I mentioned, each fellow is assigned a couple students from our journalism program here based on your needs and their skills. So do want to mention, we are now accepting applications strictly from residents of the U.S. or territories. We look for staff employed or independent journalists. We've had a healthy mix of both. The requirement that we look for is 5 years of professional reporting experience, in-depth reporting experience on projects is a plus. So I mentioned residential versus remote. There's still a preference for full-time residential. It's a better experience for you and us. I think overall we've done well with remote fellows and hybrid, and that seems to be kind of a reality of the situation today. But do talk to us about the possibilities for how much time you can be in Milwaukee. Deadlines. The application period closes on January 19th. It opens on December 1st. Rare is the applicant who applies on the early side of that, but actually one person who applied on the first day last year ended up being a fellow. So it definitely can work to your advantage if you want a lot of feedback. And I can give you feedback well before you apply as well. I have a habit of kicking back and forth drafts of proposals so that you're not flying blind, so that you can take advantage of what I know about what our selection committee wants and what they look for, and tweak the proposal as needed. So you can see the requirements on the screen there in terms of what we ask for. We do call references. Want to also mention right before we get to the Q&A that we have a very extensive frequently asked questions site for you on the O'Brien website that you should check out. It's got a lot of detailed answers based on questions in the past. So I think that's it. And we can roll into questions. I'm going to ask Hannah and Vanessa to kind of keep an eye on the chat and the raised hands. We also have a few questions that came in advance that we'll get to. So have at it.
Yeah, so now we're going to begin the question and answer portion of the meeting. As Dave said, again, feel free to type your questions in the chat, use the raise hand function, or just speak up directly so that we can get your questions answered.
See, Isabel's hand was first. Go ahead.
Hi there. Thank you so much for doing this. One question that I had is what a hybrid fellowship looks like in practice. If you could talk a little bit about how some fellows have done that.
Sure. So right now, as an example, we have a documentary filmmaker from California, Pamela Johnson, and she's hybrid. She, this semester, probably will spend a total of about 15 days in Milwaukee, 2 like week-long stints where she has rented an apartment, an Airbnb that we pay for, so that she's able to set up in her office, have a lot of editing time on her film, meet with students, faculty, etc., and just make it. It's been great. That's a little on the high end in terms of how much you would visit Milwaukee. It's kind of, it's as needed, as you're able. We do pay for that, so that makes it a lot easier. But it's all kind of negotiable based on personal and professional situations. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. That sounds great. Thank you.
Can I add to that, Dave?
Sure, go ahead, Hannah.
Yeah, I'm currently working with Pamela, and even though she's virtual, we meet about 2 times a week via Teams. So although she's far away, it's still a good experience because I can consistently meet with her, call her on the phone, text her, and still get advice and feel present in the project. So even though she's far away, I still really do appreciate having her.
Thank you.
And then I saw Mary's hand was next.
Hello. Hi, Jake. I was just on a meeting with him, so that's funny. My question is there ever a circumstance where like people have applied as like a pair or a team, or if there's like, I know you said the 9,000 in research travel money, if that like could ever go towards like a stipend. I'm thinking specific of a project that I'm working on with someone else. Yeah, that's just.
Sure. Good question. We've discussed that in the past, and we haven't ruled it out. Obviously, you'd have to have an agreement in some fashion to split the stipend. We wouldn't be able to add another slot. And we could negotiate around the reporting resources. These are challenging projects often, and a lot of help comes in. Sometimes people are hiring, data analysts and researchers, working with academics. So we could discuss that, Mary.
And then I saw Jake was next too.
Good morning. Thank you for your time today. My question is if you have any advice for people applying as an independent journalist. It's my understanding you'd have to find a newsroom to host your project, kind of. Where does that fall in the timeline, and any advice for finding newsrooms?
Sure, Jake. So we get a lot of independent applications now, and we've gotten pretty good at figuring this out. We actually don't require that you have a commitment to publish from anybody. It's just too far in advance to be realistic. You're applying in December, you start in August, the project runs a year. It's hard to, get a publication to commit that far in advance. We do look for like some preliminary indication, maybe somebody you've had a relationship with in terms of a media outlet who could be one of your references, who might send a preliminary, hey, we worked with Jake, we like him. This sounds like an interesting story. We'd be interested in, we preliminarily, express an interest in it. Once in a while we have, we had a New York Times correspondent, so you kind of know where that's going to go. You have people who have relationships of long standing, and they do come in. The Atlantic is interested in a piece, but we've also had freelancers who did not know where the story was going to go. It's a little scary for everybody, but we just do the best we can with that and help them pitch, look for other resources for them as well during the fellowship. And, sometimes it takes a while to get published, as you all know, but, the reality of the situation is that there's a lot of independent journalists right now, and we're going to get a lot of applications. So we do look for a certain degree of certainty. We prefer that, but if we love the project and we think you're capable of doing it and you're a good fit, like we will take a chance on that and say, we're going to get this published somehow. So I hope that helps.
Yeah. Do the local outlets in Milwaukee ever partner with people doing this? Yeah.
Yeah, very common. The Milwaukee Journal Sentinel is a co-founder of the fellowship. They can provide resources. They co-publish projects that make sense either in the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel or through the Gannett network that they're part of now. So that happens with some frequency. And because fellows are linked to Milwaukee and Wisconsin for this period, many times the students end up doing a piece that might do like a Milwaukee angle on the project. And that can come in handy if, let's say, the New York Times doesn't want to, they want their correspondent to be the sole person, getting a byline on a story. And the workaround can be, let's find a different publication and do kind of a spin-off story where you would help guide the students and I would help guide the students to do something, a local, kind of a local version of the project, essentially. But yeah, there's a lot of support from Milwaukee. They've gotten stories placed in other Gannett papers, in the USA Today, etc. So that's a big boost.
Cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Kate, I see your hand is raised.
Hi, thank you so much for taking the time.
Sure.
I had a question as far as the editorial relationship. Are there editors within the fellowship who will be guiding and shaping the final product? And how might that differ between journalists who are housed in a newsroom versus independent folks?
Great question. So, and Kate, you are an independent. Are you working in?
I'm with the newsroom right now.
Okay. So if you're coming from a newsroom, we strongly encourage you to continue your relationship with whatever editor is going to be involved in your project. At times, fellows can get a little bit forgotten about when they go on a fellowship, and that's not good for the project. My role is, as a longtime journalist, I'm sort of the story therapist. I'm here day to day with you, right? Whether you're here or not, I'm in constant contact. And stuff comes up, right? Like you got to make a decision about X. Should I do this? How do I work the students into this? So I'm kind of your first consultant, and I also will read drafts based on just as a reader, like, can you react to this? But you're still reporting to your newsroom, getting advice from them, because ultimately we don't want a situation where we've come up with something that they're surprised by. So fellows will do it differently. Freelance fellows will often rely heavily on me, as kind of that first editor, especially if they don't know where it's being published. So it's a mix, and some fellows prefer, maybe they have a long-time relationship. We have a radio reporter now who's, working with a former producer at WBEZ, and, that's going to be the prime point of contact there. But even in that scenario, like, we are still in constant support mode, in terms of the day-to-day. And I've done a lot of long projects, and I know the joy is in the agonies of it. So you got to have somebody to talk to when you need to talk to somebody. Hope that helps.
And Umar, I see your hand is raised as well.
Hi. I had two quick questions. One is there any, if someone is, like I'm doing a fellowship now at ProPublica, and I was wondering if that kind of counts against me if I'm applying for a fellowship right afterwards. That's one question. And the other question is, is there any like international angle or international reporting project that might be considered? I assume like it has to still have some kind of strong US accountability angle, but if you've done any kind of international projects before, what were they like?
First on the fellowship. No, that would not work against you. I mean, we would look at your experience and, you know, whether you have that. I think years ago there might have been a bias against people who hopped between fellowships, but now, given the state of the industry, it's just a reality, and it's a great career path to do a fellowship to develop your skills. So no, that wouldn't work against you. On the international side, so we have had stories that have had strong international components. There was one on that basically predicted the pandemic, where diseases that jump from animals to humans. They traveled to several different continents for that story. The reporter was in Milwaukee actually, but it ended up being an international project. We're interested in that you would have strong domestic media partner. You know, you could have an international and domestic media partner, and really, our primary audience is a U.S. audience. So the reporting, though, and often for our solutions angles, you know, we've sent people to various countries to find out how they're doing something better. We even went to Belgium twice in 2 months. Don't know how that happened really, but it did. So yeah, that's kind of the situation on the international story proposals.
Thank you.
And then Michael, go ahead.
Oh yeah, hi. Hi everybody. Thanks for the session, and it sounds like it's a very supportive bunch there for this fellowship. My question has to do with sort of finished product. You talked about a documentary, and I'm wondering if I mean, my project would be good either way, but I think bigger. So book, I haven't heard anything about a book mentioned. It feels like it's more series and newspaper oriented, which my project would go fine with. But I've also have these bigger sort of idea about book, and then the other question is, I've done a lot of research and reporting already on it, so it would really be, yeah, it would be interesting to find the resources and help students. So anyway, thank you. I'll listen.
Sure. The book question is a common one. So this is not the place to come to write a book, but we've had several fellows who are in the research process and have their eye on publishing, for instance, a magazine story, an extensive magazine story that might represent a chapter or two of a potential book. So we're fine with that. If we like the project and you're committed to, you know, getting something published in advance, well in advance of the book coming out, that's fine. And yeah, so sometimes it could also be, you know, a newspaper series or stories or magazine, just so that part of it is that, you know, the students help out and they don't want to wait 6 years, you know, for a book to come out to see their work. And, you know, we want to make sure that there's a lot of reporting and research done during the fellowship, and then it's not a writing and editing process on the book. Does that help, Michael?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. All right.
Mary, you have a question?
Hi, yes, I'm back. I was wondering if you could describe what full-time means in the case of your fellowship, just because I see that like it says you can do work on your own time. Obviously, if it's remote or hybrid, it might not be 9 to 5. So I guess like what, yeah, is it 40 hours a week? Is it certain hours of the day?
Sure. Yeah, this is an important question, you know, especially for independent journalists who are used to going in 12 different directions at one time. I mean, this is an opportunity to kind of be on a different track, you know, for the fellowship. It's a full-time gig for sure, and that doesn't mean you're punching a clock and working 9 to 5. But you know, just the depth and scope of these projects, helping guide the students, meeting with them and me on a regular basis. It's definitely got to be your number one thing. And we've also found that when people try to juggle, like you lose that focus that you need to land a really intense, deeply researched project. It's really hard to switch back and forth. So, I mean, we've had freelance fellows who've been super active. You know, they're running a organization for independent journalists and doing that. So we're not asking that you stop all of the work, but in terms of like your reporting energy and work, like we need to be able to reach you like any employee, because you would literally be an employee of Marquette for 9 months, whenever we need to. And it's got to be like the number one focus. So we don't say, I know some fellowships will say, especially during COVID, like we need 60% of your time or something like that. But given the amount of our stipend, you know, this is a full-time job. So I hope that clarifies a little bit.
Yeah, and just if I can follow up real quick, as far as like meeting with the students, does that typically happen at a consistent period every week? Or I guess I'm kind of wondering like,
Sure.
And in transparency, I live in Chicago, so theoretically it would be very easy to do a hybrid once a week, you know, that kind of thing where
Sure.
we're basically neighbors. So yeah, like how does that cadence kind of work throughout the week?
So you would work with you would have a team meeting once a week for about an hour, and then you would meet with your individual students once a week. And those typically are quicker check-ins. We have a fellow from Chicago right now who comes up on the train every Wednesday and stays for the day and has her team meeting. Obviously the remote fellows are having a virtual meeting with their students. So there is that rhythm to it. Now those times can get adjusted as things happen. If you're out on the road reporting for, you know, a week, you know, you might just have a quick check-in. Students might be with you on the road. So you know, this is not like an office where, you know, you have to meet at the exact same minute. But there is a rhythm to it because it's part of the student class schedule, essentially. So once you determine a time that works for everybody, it's nice to stick to that.
And then, excuse me if I pronounce this incorrectly, but Sataline, I see your hand is also raised.
That's me, Suzanne. The first name's easier. I guess the camera's not. Oh wait, is the camera working? You can see my mess.
There you are.
Hi, thank you so much. This is very exciting because this is somebody who likes coaching, but not being chained to a desk editing. This seems really great. I've done some of this in Hong Kong and it was really fun. But then they chained me to the desk. I can do one thing. I'm an older journalist and I can do the print thing. But what I'm really interested in working with people who have skills that I do not possess. And I wanted to know about how that might work, how I might work with a data person sounds so stupid. A person who's expert in dealing with data, and a person skilled with making documentaries.
Sure. Yeah, that's a common scenario where we have whatever print reporters who haven't done a lot of multimedia, and we will, make sure that they have students who can help with video, audio recording, whatever, graphics, etc. So that's a common scenario. And in terms of other help, there are limits. I mean, data experts are quite pricey. They're essential, and so that there are limits kind of on how far that money goes. But very common for fellows to hire somebody through IRE to analyze some data. Students are great for collecting data. If you need 100 phone calls made, to get a certain data set, that's a classic assignment for O'Brien. Like, it's just more hands on deck. So it depends on your needs. We have gone out and helped people get additional funding, if they need it. So we try to match you up with students that kind of help fill some of your needs, and they have their own goals as well. So it's a nice two-way street.
Okay, great. Fabulous. Thanks.
Isabel, go ahead.
Hi again. Really appreciate the opportunity to get feedback from you, Dave, on a project proposal, but want to be, respectful of your time. So I was wondering if there are any metrics you would like the proposal to clear, or kind of things we should have in place before we reach out to you for that initial feedback.
I'm not real picky about that. I get calls from people who are literally kicking around an idea they just thought up. I also hear from people who, hey, I've been chipping away at this for 5 years, and I wonder what you think about it. I won't judge you if it's not fully developed. In answering this, I want to refer to a question we got in advance that talks about, how quote unquote rough are the fellows' ideas, when they propose them compared to how they look later in the process. Ultimately, most of the proposals that are successful are quite well developed. There's quite a bit of pre-reporting. It's not enough to have a great topic and not know, what are some of the provocative questions that you're trying to answer? What are the data sources? What are the challenges and obstacles? We have had fellows who've sort of started from scratch when they got here, and that definitely can work out. But we certainly enjoy seeing things that are pretty well developed to the point where you have to do that for a pitch anyways. But it's great when somebody, they're covering child welfare beat for 3 years, and now they have this idea and they're pretty well informed on it. Maybe it's a spin-off or a follow-up to something that you've done in the past. That's a classic O'Brien application. They have the knowledge. They always wanted to get to this one aspect that they didn't have time, and they're ready to jump in on it. They know what they're getting into. So all stages of development, Isabel, but I'm happy. And some people will call and say, I've got these 3 ideas, which do you think would be the best fit for O'Brien? So I'm not gonna, as I said, judge, where you're at in the process. I'm happy to just kick story ideas around. It's quite early, actually. I mean, you still got a couple months here. God knows, I get calls the day before saying, what if I pitch this? So it takes a village, to get a group of applications. So I hope that helps a little bit.
Yeah, thank you.
And then we actually have one of our current fellows here. Angie has her hand raised, so I'll give her the floor.
Hey, Angie.
Hi, hello. Hi. I was listening to some of the questions and everything, and I figured as a current fellow, I could answer some questions, respond to some questions in real time. That's happening with me. So the question was from Kate Payne, talked about how do you work with editors, how do you find editors and things like that. If you're, working, if you're independent or if you're coming from a former newsroom. Well, I'm a photojournalist, and as a photojournalist, I never had a word editor. And I knew because I was going to be doing a bulk of the writing that I needed to advocate and find an editor in the newsroom at the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. And I reached out to someone who I respected, whose news judgment I valued, and talked her into becoming my word editor. Ironically, my photo editor is also her husband. So I have a team of husband and wife that are actually working with me on my project, which is great. The other question was from Mary Hall, who talked about managing your time. That's been a challenge for me because I am here remotely, and I love spending time in the office there, but I discovered that I need to have time at my home office here in my home. I don't even go into the newsroom to work, basically, for the most part. So I do about 2 days in the newsroom at O'Brien, and I do 2 days at my home office at my home where it's quiet, and or if I'm out in the field. And there oftentimes too, my schedule is really dictated according to my subject's needs and things like that. So for example, I'm working this weekend on something. I'm working Tuesday. It's to do a piece on a mother at 7 a.m. in the morning. And I'm going to be doing several families on Thanksgiving Day because I really want to get a sense of community for this project here that I'm working on. But I try to give myself Friday off or work a half day, unless I have to come into the office for those workshops. But I do try to give myself like Friday off or work like a half a day. So I just wanted to respond to some of those questions in real time.
So Angie, as she said, is an example of somebody employed by a media outlet. She's also represents a trend where we've had more multimedia journalists over the last several years, to filmmakers, public radio, somebody's making a podcast. So the students really enjoy those aspects. And if you're thinking about applying, you may want to consider, if you're print oriented, how you could add some multimedia elements to your project. Just generates a lot of excitement, and students sometimes will be thrilled to death to do a 5-minute video that accompanies the project, and it can have a lot of impact and add a lot to the project. So Angie's been great with working with students, not only on her team, but on the other teams, helping them with visual aspects, training students in student media here, which is sort of, the best case scenario for a fellowship like this. If you're residential, you end up learning things about yourself, skills that you maybe didn't know you had, that you're a great mentor, that you like to get in a classroom and you're excited to talk to students. And faculty here have helped out with, we have a professor in journalism who's a FOIA expert, has done it a million times all around the country and has helped out. He helped a fellow who was looking into sexual abuse and harassment in the National Guard do FOIAs to all 50 states on that project. So there's a lot of collaboration that can come in that you maybe don't anticipate going in, but once you get the EDU email address, you are viewed as a scholar and you have access to a lot of academics and scholarship and data that you don't have outside the academic environment. So that can open up a lot of collaborations as well. Hannah and Vanessa, can you, I see we have another question, but I do want to ask Hannah and Vanessa to talk just briefly about what they're doing for their fellows.
I'll let Hannah go ahead, since I'll kind of jump on what she talks about. Oh, you're muted, Hannah.
Sorry. As we kind of mentioned earlier, I'm working with Pamela, who is a filmmaker, and we're working on a documentary And just to give like a brief synopsis of the project without giving away too much, we're looking at drowning disparities in the Black community and tracing, look, we have three tenets: culture, cure, and harm. And we're looking at the culture of swimming in Black communities, tracing back to Africa and kind of the harm that happened that caused a lot of the drowning disparities, such as Jim Crow laws. And then we're looking at the cure, what is being done today to almost reunite Black people in swimming. So we're looking at different swimming teams, different resources that are provided for Black people. And so that's kind of what we're doing now. And as Dave was saying, it's a good opportunity because I never worked on a documentary to kind of expand my skill set in that way versus just doing print writing. So yeah, it's a really great project. And one of the things I like is the collaboration. So Angie helped me learn how to take photos. And when we went on our trip to South Carolina, I was a photographer for the trip. So I like that it's not just your team, but it's a big team that we can all collaborate and get advice and resources and skill sets from one another. So yeah.
And just to jump on that, I kind of come in and join on these trips that these fellows have. So for example, the last trip that Hannah's fellow went on, I was there with her as a videographer and helped her with reporting. So I kind of fill in wherever is needed, more so on the video and photo side. And I've been on multiple trips last year as well. So as they come and as, resources are needed, like Hannah said, it's kind of a big group effort. Then I fill in and do whatever I can to help the fellow and support them and making sure that they can get everything that they need without feeling shorthanded.
Vanessa was part of a healthcare project last year. She's done, it's been in O'Brien for 2 years now. It was on the social determinants of health. It was by a medical business reporter. And that story won an SPJ National Award for the best student professional collaboration. So that was an example of what can happen when students and professionals are paired up. Other questions out there? I see a hand up.
I believe Tammy. Yeah, go ahead, Tammy.
Hi, thank you so much. I wanted to learn more about the podcast project, what that involved, because that is something I would be interested in doing.
Sure. We do see more applicants who are either doing a podcast, proposing to do a podcast. Maybe they've done one in the past. They want to extend it. And we had a podcast project last year, hasn't come out yet. That was a really high level one. American Public Media, assigned a number of producers and editors to this project. There's a book coming out and a 10-part podcast this year in 2024, actually. And that was an idea the book was done, and the goal was to turn parts of the book into a deeply reported podcast. So that team, students would join up with the APM team on the road. That was one of the Civil Rights Alabama trips. This is an amazing project on intergenerational trauma from slavery and Jim Crow, how it affected one extended family, and it's going to be quite a splash, I think, on American Public Media. Those kind of projects, as you know, can be incredibly expensive. Essentially, that fellow Lee Hawkins was kind of hired by APM almost. So they were covering expenses and adding staff. We've also had people apply to do podcasts kind of on their own and in hopes of using some of their O'Brien money to hire an editor or producer, et cetera. And that can work out as well. We know that podcasts can sometimes take years to develop. So that isn't ideal for us. So we keep a close eye kind of on how long is this going to take? How much help do you need? What's your budget? Does that help at all?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Happy to talk more about that, Tammy, if you want to follow up on another day.
I see Caroline, your hand is raised. You may be muted if you're speaking. And if you're having any mic issues, feel free to type it in the chat as well. We can answer that way.
We do have a question in the chat while she figures out her mic stuff. Mary asks, what specialty does Marquette focus on in the journalism/comm department? She's curious if the school focus on any specific format or any specific media or formats of journalism.
Yes, I just answered that in the chat, but I'll expand on that.
Oh,
So
sorry.
It's okay. As you were speaking, Hannah, I was typing. Yeah, it's an amazing confluence here. We have the O'Brien Fellowship, which is, in-depth reporting, a lot of data. We have 2 or 3 professors in the comm school now who focus on data analytics, data visualization, and AI. And we have a strong social justice element between O'Brien. We have a social justice journalism class, and we house in the building here a nonprofit newsroom that covers underserved communities in Milwaukee Central City. It's called the Neighborhood News Service, the Milwaukee Neighborhood News Service, and it's become quite prominent. We have students who intern there, and it's a nice fit with our mission here. So, we're a small journalism department, but the opportunities for students here between the Neighborhood News Service, O'Brien, Student Media has $1 million TV studio and newsroom that is absolute top of the line. So there's a lot going on here that you can plug into, and a lot of it's basically internships along with the class structure. So does that answer it, Mary?
Yes, that's very helpful. Thank you.
And I see Caroline, I see your mic is unmuted.
Yes, thank you. I apologize for the technical issue and everything. I wanted to know, do you have a list of published works that we could read, watch, or listen to help us understand the scope of what you're looking for?
Sure. I'll ask Vanessa or Hannah to drop a link in the chat. We have a very extensive website that has a catalog, a page called Our Work, and you can drill into the projects that the fellows have done. It really runs the gamut. Sometimes it's one magazine story. Other times, some of these newspaper reporters have done 10 stories over, a year. We've, like I said, we've had a couple films. It isn't really about the quantity as much as it is the quality and the impact. Catherine Lewis, an education independent journalist, really worked hard on a series on how diversity and inclusion is taught in K-12 classrooms and how teachers are trained on that and whether any of it works. And it was a very rigorous project. They surveyed like the 30 largest school districts in the country. Students were deeply involved. And, it essentially was one big story in USA Today that ran quite recently. Amazing findings and rigor in that project. And if you're working as a freelancer, it's probably unlikely you're going to get a 10-part series done, right? A lot of the longer, bigger projects we've had have been from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel fellows who, they often will get like another year after the fellowship to keep going on their project. So that's pretty rare. But we just figure out as we go along in terms of, what's the best way to do this and the best place to try to place it. So I hope that helps a little bit, Carlene.
Thank you.
And then Susan, your hand is raised.
Whoops. Hi. Thank you. I couldn't let this. Oh, wait, here, I should turn my camera back on. So Dave, you mentioned that you have used pro bono lawyers and the Journal-Sentinel as attorneys at times to get documents. I just wanted to hear a touch more on that because I'm kind of curious what needed a lawyer and then how the lawyer was able to get something that mere journalists could not.
Recently, the Journal-Sentinel published an O'Brien project, a piece of it. It's on guns and kind of told through the eyes of gun owners. And one of the pieces they wanted to get was the firearms related deaths from every Wisconsin county over like a 10-year period. We thought they'd probably get 10 counties. They ended up getting 71 out of 72 counties. And the final push was from a lawyer, a Gannett lawyer that they brought on board who sent letters to the holdouts. And it can be very effective. At other times we've had, we've just brought in somebody on an ad hoc basis, like a lawyer in town who is media friendly and who can draft a letter or make a phone call to get some records jarred loose. Very, very effective way to do it. And we just get what we need. Like, we've got the resources and we'll find a way to help on something like that.
Great. It's amazing that it has to come to that, but for public information.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much.
Other questions, comments, concerns? Well, these were great questions. I'm hoping that I can hear from more of you. If you want to get additional information, if you want to run some ideas past us, or just want to follow up on something that we didn't get into fully, there's my email. That's definitely the best way to get me. I'm checking it way too often. And but this is the time of year that we can get ideas going and get you focused on it. So thanks everybody for coming. Thanks to Hannah and Vanessa for producing here and helping out. And we will be in touch. Have a great weekend, everybody.